The book is Our Lost Constitution, The Willful Subversion of America's Founding Document. The author is on the line with us right now, and that's Utah Senator Mike Lee. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning. It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you on the show. Thanks for taking time out of your day for us. Boy, you know, the reviews on your book are absolutely outstanding. Mark Levin, who's part of our lineup as well, gives you a wonderful write-up, says this is an absolute must-read. You're going to want to grab this one. What inspired you to get down and knock this book out?
Well, you know, after serving in the Senate for 4 years, I've come to the conclusion that the Constitution needs to be much more part of our national political dialogue. Too often when you bring up the Constitution in Washington, D.C., and in Congress in particular, people think you're talking about the Supreme Court. They think of the Constitution as a court thing. I'm trying to make it a Congress thing. I'm trying to make it something that's part of our day-to-day political discussion in America, something that's discussed around the dinner table, something that's discussed at town hall meetings. Because when people understand the Constitution, which can happen best when they understand the stories behind it, it makes a difference, and it makes sure that the government works for the people rather than the other way around.
I was thinking about this a little bit yesterday as we have these presidential candidates enter the race, Senator, and they say, you know, we have to return to the Constitution, we have to adhere by the ways of the Constitution, by what the document says. If our founding fathers were here today, and that's a great leap, I realize, would they understand how we've sort of evolved into what we have today, this big, bloated federal government out of D.C. and nearly $4 trillion in spending? Would they even understand that?
They would be surprised. I think they'd be exceedingly disturbed because they went to great lengths to make sure that we didn't have too much power being concentrated in the hands of the few. And that's exactly the problem that we've got today in Washington. We've got too much power concentrated in Washington itself, and within Washington, too much power concentrated in the hands of executive branch bureaucrats who churn out 80,000 pages of federal regulations every single year, with the federal regulatory system costing the American economy $2 trillion a year. It's one of the reasons why I tell the story about Alexander Hamilton and the fact that he proposed a monarchy at the convention in 1787. It meant that he could never become president of the United States. They made sure of it after that. And their rejection of his idea reflected the sentiment at the time that they didn't want anyone getting too much power.
I want to go back because you mentioned that the Legislative Powers Clause means Congress is supposed to be the one to pass laws, quite obviously. But we have these regulatory agencies, unelected agencies, that are now producing these legal rules that impact Americans all across the country. They're unelected, they're unaccountable, and they're becoming a bigger and bigger part of our lives.
That's right. Every single day they're becoming a bigger part of our lives. And as I explain in the book, the problem with this is that this means that so many of our laws are now made by men and women who, however hardworking and well-intentioned and specialized they might be, aren't accountable to the people because they never stand for election. And this is a real problem because members of Congress like it this way. They're happy to have most of the law made by executive branch bureaucrats because then when they're up for re-election, they've got somebody else to blame when people complain about the laws they don't like. So I explain in the book how we can get out of this. I explain in the book how we can solve this problem, which has been many years in the making, but doesn't have to last one day more.
Spending some time with Utah Senator Mike Lee, Our Lost Constitution, the willful subversion of America's founding document. You point out some of the villains throughout the history and with the Constitution. You know, one of the things that we talk about frequently on this show is the Second Amendment, and you know how that seems to be the only constitutional right that you actually have to go and apply to actually, you know, maybe enjoy or employ. Who was the Chief Justice you referred to who called it a fraud?
Yeah, so Chief Justice Warren Burger, shortly after he stepped down from the Supreme Court, referred to it as a fraud. Now, for some reason, a lot of people took that seriously, even though he had no right to say that, even though what he said can't be reconciled with the text and the history of the Constitution. Now, Chief Justice Burger was a good man, but he was dead wrong when it came to his statement on the Second Amendment. And fortunately, a few years ago, in a case called Heller versus United States, you had a vindication of that. You had a vindication of the Second Amendment. And every once in a while, we can reclaim a provision of our lost Constitution, and it's important to do that.
On the reclaiming aspect, Senator, you have a Chapter 2, Reclaiming the Constitution Through the Power of the Purse. It's a phrase we've heard often here over the past few years as the president looks to expand or sometimes just suspend certain elements of laws that have been passed by Congress. How does Congress use this power of the purse when every time it does, it seems we have this scare tactic that you're going to shut down the whole government?
Yeah, it's interesting. James Madison described this as one of the most important powers in the government. Certainly one of the most important powers wielded by Congress was the power of the purse, because the executive branch by itself cannot appropriate money, meaning it can't spend any money without Congress approving it. And so whenever you have an executive who overreaches, a president who takes too much authority by executive order or otherwise, or just a program that's been approved by a previous Congress that's not serving the people well, the best protection against that is explained by James Madison in Federalist Number 58, is for Congress to wield the power of the purse and for Congress to withhold funding from that program. We've got to get away from the tired and disingenuous mindset that says that whenever Congress refuses to fund a particular program, it's somehow threatening to shut down the entire government. I explain this false argument in my book and explain why we've got to get away from it.
And, the other trend that's disturbing, and I'm sure you've noticed it as well, is that when people refer to the Constitution, you hear them saying, the Constitution set forth this principle, we're supposed to follow this. They're instantly thrown into, you got the right wing screaming about the Constitution again. Why is the Constitution only the provision for the right?
Well, it's not. And in fact, I wrote this book in a way that I describe as mostly politically ecumenical. It is a book that describes the stories behind the Constitution and a half dozen provisions of the Constitution that have been neglected in a way that is neither distinctively Democratic nor Republican, neither liberal nor conservative, but simply American. This is about the power of the people against their government. And this explains myriad instances, for example, in connection with the Fourth Amendment, where there is a lot of opportunity for bipartisan negotiation. In fact, I describe a couple of bills that I'm running right now with my friend and colleague, Senator Pat Leahy. He's a liberal Democrat from Vermont, and I'm not. And yet he and I are running several bills together that are designed to reinvigorate the Fourth Amendment. And I tell the stories behind the Fourth Amendment, explain how it's been weakened, and explain how my bipartisan legislation would help reinvigorate it.
U.S. Senator Mike Lee, his book, Our Lost Constitution. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. Before we let you go, a quick question on current events. Republicans, of course, the majority in the Senate now, although judging by Harry Reid's comments over the past few months, he is intent on pretending he is still leading the Senate and making demands and trying to get what he wants. Is there a clear strategy from Republicans, from Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate now, to deal with this, to allow Republicans to act as the majority of the U.S. Senate?
Well, we are acting as a majority, and yesterday I'm pleased that we passed the budget. This will be the first time in 6 years since Congress has had a budget. The last time we had a budget in place, there was no such thing as the iPad. Without a budget, you can't have a regular order appropriations process where you go and you fund government function by function. One bill to fund national defense, one to fund national parks, another to fund other priorities like criminal justice. And so this is a big accomplishment, and it's indicative of other things that we will accomplish, with or without Harry Reid's help or obstruction.
The book, Our Lost Constitution, The Willful Subversion of America's Founding Document. The author, Senator Mike Lee. Senator, thanks for taking time out of your morning for us.
Thank you for having me on your show, and I invite your listeners to go to Amazon and download or order this book today.